Hello everyone and welcome. In today's video, we'll dive into the world of lookup functions in Microsoft Excel. Throughout your Excel journey, you'll often face situations where you'll need to retrieve data from different tables. Mastering the lookup functions is crucial for efficiently solving these problems. In this video, we won't just cover the definitions and theories behind various lookup functions. We'll focus on practical examples to help you thoroughly understand and apply these concepts. I've also provided a link to the exercise files in the video description. Feel free to download them and follow along for hands-on practice. The first function we will be learning in this video is the vlookup function. Vlookup is a very commonly used function, and in your Excel journey, you will be using it a lot. The vlookup function helps you pick up corresponding values from another table. To understand this definition further, let's work through an example. Here, I have a table showing sales by product for different years. Let's say our manager wants us to filter this table for a particular category. Let's say they want to see sales only for those products that are related to the furniture category. The problem here is that we do not have a category column, or the category column is empty. If we had the values for the category column, we could have easily filtered the table for the required category. The category values are available, but they are in a different table. And for the sake of simplicity and to work through this exercise, let's call this table as a lookup table. And the table on the left, we will call it a fact table. And what we need to do is pick up the relevant category values from the lookup table and bring them into the fact table. In these kind of situations, the vlookup function will be very helpful. So the way I will do is as follows. I will put in the vlookup function. The vlookup function has 4 arguments: the lookup value, table array, column and index number, and the range lookup. In the lookup value, I'll provide the value of the product that I want to look up for. When providing the table array, it's crucial to reference the lookup table correctly. The first column of the lookup array should always contain the lookup value, as this is the key step in using the vlookup function. For example, in this formula, the lookup value is phones. Therefore, the first column in the lookup array should contain phones. In the column index number, we will need to provide the column number starting from the first column of the lookup array from which we want the function to return the resultant value. In this case, we want the formula to return the category value, which is in the second column from the left. So we're gonna input 2. And the fourth argument basically asks for if we want the function to pick up exact matches of the lookup value, or the approximate matches are fine as well. We want exact matches in this case, so we will go with false. And now I can just fix the ranges, which means that as I move the formula down, the ranges that I have given for the lookup table will not change. And then I can drag the formula down. Now we can easily filter this table and look for the sales which we need. So for example, as I mentioned, we are looking for sales of only the furniture category. We can do that very easily. Now, to learn this concept thoroughly, let's work through some more examples and understand what are some of the watchouts when using the vlookup function. I'll go to the exercise 2. And here I have a similar table, and I have very similar looking lookup table as well. In this scenario, in the lookup table, one of the values is missing. For example, as you can see, we have phones in the fact table, but we do not have phones over here. What will happen if I apply the vlookup over here? So let's apply the same formula. vlookup, the lookup value is over here. The lookup array is here, and right when I'm writing the formula, I'm gonna fix the reference as well. The column or the index number is 2, and I wanna give an exact match. As you can see, wherever the values are not found, the vlookup function will give an error. In order to avoid this error, there are 2 options. One is that you can use the xlookup function, which we will learn later in this video, or second option is to use the if error function and wrap the vlookup function inside the if error function. So I'll put if error at the beginning And if error takes two arguments, the value and the value if error. So we're saying that if there is no error, then the formula returns the output of the lookup function, which is over here. And in case if there is an error, then we want to return something like category not found. So there you can see there are two products which were not found in the lookup table, and the vlookup function has given the category not found error. Again, later on in the video, we will learn how we can achieve it in a more simpler way using the xlookup function. Let's move to exercise 3 to understand one more scenario that you might often face. Another scenario which you might often face is when the product name appears more than one time in the lookup table. In this exercise, let's say instead of the category name, we want to pick up the color of the product in this column. And on the right, we have a lookup table which now has 3 columns: product, category, and color. But note that the tables appears twice in the lookup table, because apparently tables can be of two types. They could be white as well as brown. In such a case, which exact color you want to bring into the fact table will depend upon the analysis that you're performing, and you'll be able to decide it better. However, the purpose of this exercise is to understand how the vlookup function is going to behave in such a scenario. And the vlookup function will always pick up the value which appears first in the lookup table. Let's learn it when we work through the example. So I'm going to put it the vlookup formula here, select the lookup value, which is my product name, and then I'm going to select the entire table. And note this time, instead of column number 2, I'm going to assign column number 3 because the color appears in the third column from the leftmost column in the lookup array. And again, we will make this absolute reference so that the formula can be dragged down. And there we go. So here, as you can see, for the tables, the function is picking up the brown value and not the white. Later on, when we'll learn how to use the xlookup function, I will also show you how we can tweak this formula to some extent in such a way that it picks up the second value rather than the first value. Let's move on to the next exercise. This is one of the most common shortcomings, and to be honest, sometimes quite frustrating as well, of the vlookup function, and something that you might face quite often. This is when the value that you want to return in the fact table, which in this case is category, appears on the left-hand side of the lookup column. For example, in here in the lookup table, the product is on the right-hand side and the category is on the left-hand side. In such a case, the vlookup function will not work, because for the vlookup function to work, the lookup array, the first column of the lookup array, has to have the lookup value. So what can we do in such a case? If you're sticking to the vlookup function, then perhaps the solution is to add a helper column on the right and pick up the values from there. And I will show you what I mean by that. So here on the right, I'm gonna add the helpers column, and I'm gonna bring the category here. And then I can just follow the same vlookup formula which we used in the previous exercises to get the work done. But of course, as you can see, this is quite inefficient. If you're looking up values multiple times, or if there are very large tables, then you will need to add so many helper columns, which will of course be quite time consuming. Again, this drawback is something that can be addressed by the xlookup function. Now, as we saw that all the 3 drawbacks of the vlookup that we recently saw, I mentioned that xlookup function can overcome them. Then why are we learning the vlookup function at all? This is because lots of legacy Excel files might still have the vlookup functions built into them, and therefore it's very important that we learn this function. But if you're building a new worksheet, it's always better to use the xlookup function, as it allows for a lot of flexibility. So let's move to exercise 5, where we'll see how we can tackle this situation using the xlookup function in a much simpler way. So I have the exact same fact table over here on the left and the mapping table on the right, and note that the mapping table has the value that we want to pick up, which is category, appears on the left hand side. So xlookup really simplifies the things for us. The xlookup function has three mandatory arguments: the lookup value, lookup array, and the return array. And then there are three other optional arguments, which are if not found, match mode, and search mode, which we will look into it later as well. But here I'm going to provide the lookup value, which is phones in this case, the lookup array, which is the product array, and then I can provide the resultant array or the return array, which is the category. And voila, that's all we have to do. Again, I'm just gonna make all the references absolute so that they don't move when we move the formula. And that's all. Now let's take a look at another example, which is exercise 6, where we will see how the other two problems that we discussed earlier with the vlookup function can also be resolved by using the xlookup function. So in this example, again, we have a fact table on the left and the lookup table on the right. Note that in the lookup table, one of the values is missing. I think it's the phones, and maybe the machines is missing. It's not there in the lookup table. So if we use the xlookup function, we don't need to use the if error function. We can just provide in the lookup value, the lookup array, which is the first column here, and the resultant array, which is the color column. In this particular example, we want to bring in the color. So let's look into that. I will make the references fixed again and drag the formula down. So as you can see, phones and machines, and I think even the books, are not available. That's why it's giving us an error. So in that case, we can provide the fourth optional argument in the xlookup function, which says if not found. So if not found, we want to return category not found. There we go. So now we have three categories which are not found: phones, machines, and books. Also, as you might have noticed, the tables appears twice, and right now the formula is picking up the first value, which is brown. Let's say in this case I want the formula to pick up the second value, that is, it should start from the bottom rather than the first value. It should pick up the last value that appears. In that case, I can go for the third optional argument, which is the search mode. Search mode allows us to specify if we want the function to search for the resultant value from the bottom and then go upwards, or we want the function to search from the top and return the first value that comes when searching from the top. In this case, I want to return the value white, so I'm going to put in -1 in the search mode, which indicates search from last to first. And then I'm going to drag the formula down using the Ctrl D option on my keyboard. And as you can see, the tables returns white color rather than brown because it's searching from the bottom. Now there is another optional argument of the xlookup function, which is called the match mode. Match mode can help you find approximate matches based on the criteria which you will define. For example, in this scenario, we do not have a product called book in the lookup table, and therefore the function is currently returning category not found. We have bookcases in our lookup table though, and let's say I want the formula to treat books as bookcases. In this particular case, I can use the wildcard match in the match mode. For the wildcard search, I will put 2 in the match mode. And then in front of the book, I can put an asterisk. That way, the formula is going to make a wildcard search and return the color brown, which is the color for the bookcases. There are some other match modes too, and you can get quite creative with this. The page on the Microsoft Help website explains how you can use other match modes as well. If you want to dig deeper, you can check out this link too. Next up, we will move to exercise number 8. Here, we want to bring in the category and the color name from the lookup table. But note one thing, that the lookup table is quite big this time, and category and color columns are quite at the far end. However, still we can achieve this via the vlookup formula. I'll put in the vlookup and put in the product name. The product name is on the leftmost part of the lookup table, so it should work. And I can see that the category name is column 8 and the color is column 9. So I'm going to put 8 for the category and false. And I'm going to copy the same formula, and for the color I'm going to put 9. So this works quite well in this particular situation. However, in the real life, you might see lookup tables, or you might come across lookup tables which are far bigger than the one that we have on the screen. Maybe they have 20, 25, 30 columns. And in that case, manually looking for the column number and plugging it in the vlookup formula like we did over here might be impractical, or it may be quite time consuming. Therefore, in such a situation, you will need a mechanism that picks up the column number dynamically and automatically. This can be done via the match formula, and you can design this entire formula dynamically by combining the vlookup function with the match function. But before we do that, let's have a look at what can the match function do. I'm going to come down over here, and I'm going to put in the match formula, which asks for 3 arguments: the lookup value, lookup array, and match type. In the lookup value, I'm going to put in the category. In the lookup array, I'm going to put in the entire header section of our lookup table and fix the reference. And then I'm going to ask for the exact match. So as you can see, the match function returns the position of the lookup value in the array or in the lookup array. Similarly, if I drag this formula on the rightwards, the match formula will tell me that the position of the color in the table is at 9. So rather than plugging in 8 and 9 manually into the formulas over here, we can just simply plug in the match function, which will dynamically pick up the column reference number. So over here, I'm going to copy this match function from here and paste it in place of the column number 8. And similarly, here in place of 9 as well, I'm going to replace it with the match function. Now let's drag the formula down. Oh, I think we have to give the right reference, which is the color. And also we need to fix the reference cell or the lookup value of the match function. So that way, with the vlookup function, now wherever the category or the color column is, the vlookup function is going to go and pick up that particular column for the lookup. The great thing about this approach is that it makes your formula also makes your formula error-free as well, in case if the sequence of the columns in the lookup table changes. For example, right now the category is in this position, but if someone moves the category, let's say from this position to this one, and let's say remove the values from here, it's still going to work because the formula is dynamically picking up the position of the category value. Had you not used this match function, the formula would not have worked, and let me show you how. So for example, if we do not use the match function and instead we just replace it with the column number 8, so right now the values are correct. However, if someone picks up this column from the lookup table and pastes it over here and removes it, then your formula is gonna throw up an error or it will not give you the right results. So using the match and the vlookup function really makes your formula dynamic. Another advantage of using the match function for looking up the position of the resultant column is that it can enable more user interactivity and keep the lookup column dynamic. Let me explain by way of an example what do I mean by that. So we'll go into exercise 9 for this situation. Here we want to pick up the category, and we know that the category is, let's say, the column number 8. I'm gonna use the vlookup function. So here I'm gonna pick up the table array, which is over here, and column and index number I'm gonna put 8 because the category appears in the 8 column. So it works quite well for me so far. However, all of a sudden, let's say the user whom you are sharing the table or you're sharing the report with, they don't want to see the category, they want to see the color. If you type color in over here, it still just shows you the category. It doesn't make this particular cell dynamic. So what if I want to create a feature where if the user types in color over here, rather than giving the category, it gives the color or any other property of the product. So to do that, I can use the match function here. So instead of keying in or hard coding the 8 over here, I'm gonna put match, and I'll put this value here, which is the lookup value, and then in the lookup array, I'll give the same size of the array that we have in the lookup array of the vlookup formula, and go for the exact match and close the formula. And then we'll need to make this absolute, and there we go. So again, I'm going to drag the formula down just to make sure everything is working. Now let's say if our user selects color, it's going to show them the color, and the reason is because the column reference, the resultant column reference, is dynamic. Let's say if they select country, it will give them the country as well, or whatever type of property they select. As far as that column is in the lookup table, the formula is gonna pick that up. The next formula we are going to learn about is the index function, and it's also a very common and a very handy lookup function which you should be able to use if you want to become strong in Excel. The index function works in a very similar way to the vlookup function. It just gives you a little bit more power in terms of maneuverability and being able to tweak around the formula. What does the index function do? It picks up the value from the table at any given intersection of the rows and columns. So let's say, let's learn it by way of an example. I want to bring in the color names over here, and I want to bring in the category names in this column. So I'm going to use an index function. In the index function, I'm going to give the reference to the entire lookup table, which is over here. Now, in the rows, I know that the row number for the phones is 17, so I'm going to give the 17th row. And for the column, in case of color, I know that the column number is 2, so I'm going to give that. And there it is. It returns me the relevant number. That is the category or the color. Oh, sorry, it's not 2, it's 3 over here. And if I copy the same formula in the category section, of course, I'm going to give 2. However, as you saw, I had to manually assign the 17 and 3. Similarly, over here, I had to manually assign 17 and 2, which of course is not possible. If we are working with very large tables, we'll need to keep it dynamic. Therefore, the index function is usually used in combination with the match function so that the references to the rows and column numbers can be made dynamic. So instead of 17, I'm going to put a match over here. Put phones as the lookup value and put this So now as you can see, the font's color has been picked up, and same way I'm gonna make the column reference or the column number dynamic using the match formula. So there we go. You can see that just by giving a reference to a table, we can pick up any values by giving in the position of the row and the column that we want to bring from the table or the lookup table. Now the question is that why do we use index? I mean, vlookup was doing the job well for us. So what is the reason for having the index and the match when we can use the vlookup and the match formula? The index function helps you maneuver a little bit more, which the vlookup function might not allow that easily. Let's go to exercise 11, where we'll learn more about it. Here we want to pick up the number for the profit from the table on the right. The lookup table is a bit different this time. In this situation, if I apply the vlookup function, I will not be able to get the desired results because vlookup is always going to return the value that appears right in front of the lookup value. In this example, the lookup value is phones, and right in front of the lookup value, the number that exists is the revenue number. So that's what the vlookup function is going to return. But if we use the index match combination, you will see that we can maneuver the formula to suit our needs. So I'm going to use the index function and give entire table as an array. The row number will be a match, so I'm going to give the match function, take the lookup value from here and match it here. Exact match. And the column number as well we can give, but we can do it via match, but for the time being, to keep it simple, I'm just giving the third column so we can understand the function. To understand what's happening under the hood, we can select only the match portion of the formula. Once we do that, a tooltip pops up showing the result of the selected portion of the formula. For example, here the match function is returning 4, indicating that the resultant value will be picked up from the row number 4. Or if we go one cell above, the match function is returning 1. Now we know that in row numbers 1 and 4, we have the revenue number in the second column of the table or the third column of the table. And the profit number is always 2 rows below the revenue number. Therefore, we can add 2 to the result of the match formula to get the value of profit. Next, we can drag the formula down and there we go, we get the profit values. Now, this is just one simple example of how the index match combination can help you look up values from complex tables. There are many other situations where index match can be a very powerful function and can help you look up data from tables that are not very properly arranged. Now let's move to our next exercise, which is about the hlookup function. Again, it's not a very commonly used function, but you might encounter it in some of the legacy or some of the Excel sheets. The hlookup is the inverse of the vlookup function. The vlookup function tries to find the lookup value in the first column of the lookup array and returns the corresponding value from any of the columns on the right. Likewise, hlookup function looks up for the lookup value in the first row of the lookup array and returns the corresponding value from any of the rows below the first row. For example, here I'm using a hlookup function. For the lookup value, I have given reference to cell C9, which is the category. In array, I have given the entire array from H9 to J26. This means that the function is going to look for the category in the first row of the table, which is the column number 2. Next, we need to define which row the function should return the value from. For this, we have used the match function, which takes the product name as the lookup value and searches for it along the rows of the lookup array, and returns the row number from where the resultant value needs to be retrieved. Let's hit the enter and drag the formula down. And there we go. It's returning the correct category names. In this video, we went through some of the most important lookup functions in Excel. There are many other lookup functions as well apart from this, but if you're able to get good grips on these functions and the use cases, you should be able to solve most of the lookup problems you will encounter in your work. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel.